achieve. Because I do the things I should, to my brethren kind and good. So I'll keep moving on, I won't stop now. I'll keep moving on, till I reach the top somehow.
Okay, my Straight Talk family, in the event you are pondering and wondering, where am I? I'm right here, waiting for you. And I'm somewhat tired tonight, but forgive me, that's beyond my control. But it's time for me to say a very pleasant night to you, wherever you are, in the Kittitian and Nevision diaspora, or I should stay at home first. I should always stay at home and say good night to the lovely people in St. Kitts and Nevis and throughout the entire Caribbean region. To my Straight Talk family now, I can say in the Kittitian and Nevision diaspora, greetings to you wherever you are. I know there's some of you are in Africa, there's some of you in Asia, there are some of you in Europe, and there are a whole lot of you right here in North America. So I'm at liberty to say good night. I can say good morning in some cases. In another case, I can say good afternoon, because one of such greetings will be applicable to the region in which you now find yourselves. And in the event you are joining me for the first time, I must inform you that Straight Talk is a program that facilitates and promotes issues of national interest, be they legal, be they environmental, be they technological, social, economic, and or political issues. On Straight Talk, you do have a forum to express yourselves freely. Let's in the process try to keep St. Kitts and Nevis as the freest country in the entire world. On this program, we try to also raise the level of national discourse. We try to raise the level of national consciousness by alerting our people to their rights, to their responsibilities, and certainly to their obligations. My name is Ian Patches Liburd, and I always give God thanks for opportunities like this one, where we can communicate with each other, express ourselves, and thank Him for having us, affording us the opportunity to speak to two very famous persons in St. Kitts and Nevis, and I tell you, they are famous all over the world. One of them is the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws. She has been here before, and I say good night to you, Dr. Laws. I can also say,
I've been traveling betwixt the mountains and the coasts of this great land to visit all.
Yes, Chico, something you're doing there. Let's ensure that the CMO's microphone is up and about. Are you there, Dr. Laws? Can you hear me?
About to begin. America Says. All new weeknights at 7, starting Monday, May 31st.
Okay, here's what. We have some difficulty there. Let's see if we can do that.
Whatever my mind can see, that I will achieve. it up somehow. I'll keep moving on. I won't stop now. I'll keep moving on till I reach the top somehow. I'll keep moving.
Okay, let me say good night again to you, my Straight Dog family. We had some technical glitch there. I trust that Chico is with me now, and our guests can hear me. Can you hear me, Dr. Laws?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I say good night one more time. I do apologize for that technical glitch. And we have in studio with me Dr. Hazel Laws, the Chief Medical Officer, and Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, the Medical Chief of Staff at the Joseph N. France Hospital. And we're happy to have them tonight. Sometimes, or most times, we like to get rid of the frills. Don't mind you see me dressed this way, my guest. I just had to scramble from a meeting to get here on time for this discussion, which is, we anticipate will be a great discussion, and no doubt about the most to talk about issue all over the world, to wit the COVID-19 or the coronavirus-induced pandemic. Let me say good night again to Doctors Laws and Cameron.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, Ian. Thanks for having us on your show tonight.
It's my pleasure, and I like the way you started. So if you can call me Ian, most people call me Patches. So I hope I can say Cameron and I can say Hazel. Can I?
Yes, you can.
And I would say Patches because saying Ian doesn't compute for me at all.
Tell us about Dr. Laws. Tell us about Cameron, and Hazel Laws. I know we heard about Hazel Laws before on Straight Talk, but some people may have missed it. Whichever one of you want to go first, tell us about Cameron and or Hazel.
Well, I like to keep information about me very simple. I just want to say that my name is Cameron Wilkinson. I was born right here in St. Kitts, Nevis Street to be exact. And I went off to study medicine, I think it was in 1982-83. And I returned to the Federation in 1997 after qualifying as a surgeon in the United States. And I've been serving my country since. And I'm happy to have been working with Dr. Laws over the past few years, and specifically over the last year, where our country and the world is facing the greatest health crisis, the coronavirus pandemic. And it's very good when you have a good working relationship with the persons who you are forced to work with. And so, although you have to work with the persons, if you have a good working relationship, it becomes a very pleasurable one. And so, I am happy to be seated here with her tonight also to share information about the pandemic to the people of the country and the diaspora who happen to be listening.
Okay, so likewise, I was born here in St. Kitts, to be more specific, on Mansion Estate. That's where I grew up. I left St. Kitts in 1986, and then I went to the University of the West Indies, Mona campus in Jamaica, and then I stayed on and I worked at the university for a number of years. And then in 2016, I was asked to return home to serve in the present post as Chief Medical Officer, and then COVID pandemic happened, and I must say I'm very grateful for the health team that we've been working with from last year January to present. We have been at the forefront in terms of the response to this pandemic, and I've been working closely with Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, and I'm very appreciative of his support in this regard.
And life is funny because she was my junior when we were in medical school, and now she's turned around being my boss as a CMO.
I guess you set a good example for her. So she now has turned around being your boss. No, both of you though, have been and continue to be a formidable force in this fight against this COVID-19, or during this pandemic, I should say. When it's going to end? Will it ever end?
I think we are, based on how it's unfolding, the pandemic, the space is becoming very complicated with the emerging variants, and from all appearances, we are going to be living with COVID for some time.
The only thing I want to add though is that how long this pandemic goes on depends on all of us.
Yes, yeah.
And here in St. Kitts, we were able to contain the virus with the prescription of non-pharmaceuticals that you heard us preaching about from ever since we started, in terms of the social distancing, wearing a mask, etc. And I believe that if the entire world had done that, we would have been in a better place. We, however, now have vaccines, and the vaccines are what's going to help us end this pandemic. And so if we have a proper rollout of the vaccines, not just nationally but worldwide, hopefully we'll see the light at the end of the tunnel. But as the CMO said, though, this is going to be with us for quite some time, with the vaccine hesitancy, etc., that we have around.
Tell me something now, the vaccines, and I'm proud to say that I got my second jab on Friday, and I feel good. I feel I have that tool that's required in the fight. But there are several different types of vaccines, and lots of comparisons have been made. What is your comments on that?
Okay, so at present, the World Health Organization has approved a number of vaccines. It's really the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is a basic vaccine, but there are about 3 different manufacturers. And also the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has also been approved by the World Health Organization. So basically, in summary, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, once you are fully vaccinated, you enjoy a 95% risk reduction in picking up the virus. It is really given to persons 16 years and over. Just today, however, the FDA has approved its use in children 12 to 16 years of age. It requires 2 doses or 2 injections about 3 weeks apart. So that's the Pfizer-BioNTech. The Moderna vaccine is similar. It's a similar vaccine to the Pfizer-BioNTech. It's one of the vaccine platform is an mRNA vaccine. It affords the acceptor 94% risk reduction in picking up COVID-19, and this vaccine is given to persons over 18, and like Pfizer-BioNTech, it requires 2 injections 28 days apart.
Yeah, well, the other 2 vaccines that we hear a lot about, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and we also have the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. The Johnson & Johnson is just a one-shot jab, and so there are a lot of persons who like the idea of the one-shot because believe it or not, there are a lot of persons whose hesitancy on the vaccine is not just because they are afraid of the vaccine, but they're afraid of the needles. And here in St. Kitts, there are a number of persons who just don't like to hear the thought of a needle. And so some persons would prefer to have the Johnson & Johnson, but it's not available here. And the efficacy in clinical trials was about 66% in terms of preventing you contracting disease. The AstraZeneca vaccine is the one that we have, however, which is a viral vector vaccine like the Johnson & Johnson. And after your second dose, you have protection of about 82.4%. And the good thing about this vaccine, it can be stored at room temperature, at refrigerator temperature, and we know it is safe, it is effective, and our studies have shown too that it can decrease your risk of transmitting the disease, and so it not only protects you from severe disease and death, but it also offers you some protection in terms of not getting the disease itself. And so that's the vaccine that we have available here in the Federation, and we continue to encourage persons to roll up their sleeves and take it, not just to protect themselves, but to protect those who cannot get the vaccine.
I want to add that the Pfizer-BioNTech and the Moderna vaccine, they are not yet accessible to us. We have not been able to access any of these other vaccines.
And Ian, while we're on this, talking about the different vaccines, sometimes we hear persons saying that, well, yes, we have the AstraZeneca vaccine available to us, but they're waiting for the Johnson & Johnson or the Pfizer-BioNTech. And we have to understand with that the Pfizer-BioNTech, it requires special storage. You have to store it at ultra-cold storage, which requires a special refrigerator. No matter what fire truck shows up, you will use that fire truck. And so the truck that we have to out this fire is the AstraZeneca vaccine, and we need to use it.
I want to add that the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine has the widest reach globally. Over 148 countries are utilizing the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine. The Pfizer-BioNTech is only in about 93 countries.
You mentioned the FDA earlier, right? And the clinical trials have been proven to be safe and effective. And I'm aware that some people are hesitant because of the speed in which these vaccines were developed. Is that a reasonable concern?
Yes, you want me to start?
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. There are some persons who are concerned about the speed at which these vaccines were developed. But if you understand what happens in the development of a vaccine, there should be no concern really. Yes, prior to the vaccines for COVID-19, the one that was developed the fastest, I think, was the measles, which took about 5 years. But when one is developing a vaccine, there are three hurdles you have to cross. Number one, funding, because upfront there's a lot of money to be made initially, and so companies are usually looking for funding. And a number of the first world countries, including the United States, because of the severity of the pandemic, they put a lot of funding up front, so the companies did not have to worry about finding funding to go into the research, because you have to understand that there are a lot of trials that will start, but very few will reach to the point where the vaccine goes into someone's arm. And so you can have, right now you have over 200 trials, mm-hmm. but only about 8 or 10 reaching the platform where they can go into persons' arms. And so if you don't have necessary funding to go through all of those trials, knowing that you might not be making any profit at the end, it becomes a problem. And so funding was not a problem. Secondly, we usually have a hurdle to cross in trying to find volunteers, persons who are willing to say they're going to take this experimental thing and put it in their arms. But because the disease was so rampant and persons were dying, there was no shortage of volunteers willing to come forward and take the jab. Even as you see now with the trials where they are testing the vaccine in younger age groups, there are mothers who are going forward with their children and saying, I'm willing to put my child up to get the vaccine. And so there is no shortage of volunteers. And so this is one of the vaccines that has the largest number of persons in the clinical trials. And lastly, there was no shortage of disease, and so it was very easy for one to determine with the controls and those who were infected to see how effective these vaccines will be. So those are three things that would have contributed. Plus, there was
the advancement in medicine, more specifically biotechnology. What I want to add is that work in terms of these newer vaccines begun as far back as 2003, when you had the SARS outbreak, and then the scientific work continued in 2012 when you had the MERS outbreak. Now, SARS and MERS were caused by, or are caused by, the coronavirus, which is similar to the virus that is causing COVID-19. And so the scientific work started as far back as 2003. So it's not just from last year, January 2020, that work on this on these vaccines started.
You mentioned mothers, and someone said to me, in my approach of providing encouragement to take the jab, said they were cautious because their, I don't know if fertility is the right term, would be affected. This is a young woman down the road. What sort of negative impact will it have on future mothers? And happy belated Mother's Day.
Thank you.
And
Thank
all the
you.
mothers as well.
Thank you.
Is there something to worry about for young women who have not reproduced as yet? Does a vaccine, is there a possibility of affecting that process?
That's a myth. There is no scientific evidence to show that is so, and that should be mentioned just to be dispelled. I know that there are some persons who were fed what we call now fake news about the vaccine, and that's one of the things that have been circulating, but there is no scientific evidence at all to show that this vaccine causes infertility. What we know is that the vaccine is safe, the vaccine can prevent you from getting severe disease, the vaccine can prevent death, the vaccine can help to decrease the clusters that can occur, and it is the safest way for us to get out of this pandemic, but it does not cause infertility. We can say that for sure.
But does it cause any effects, long-term, short-term, or any effects at all, or defects?
Well, there are some side effects that one can get if one gets the vaccine, and most of us who would have received vaccines as children would have been aware of some of the side effects, where you might have some pain at the injection site, fever, fatigue, lethargy. As a matter of fact, we've been keeping a track of the side effects. What are some of the common side effects we've been reporting?
Basically, pain at the injection site, low-grade fever, that responds quite well to acetaminophen, Panadols, fatigue, feeling, unusually tired. Some persons complain of headache, muscle pain, mild nausea. So those are the main symptoms that our locals have reported after receiving the vaccine. But I want to say that a big percentage of individuals who have received the vaccine had no problems whatsoever. So that's also significant.
Yeah, and Ian, it's important for us to remember too that people get sick all the time. And so persons would have been getting sick before the vaccine, persons will continue to get sick after the vaccine. And sometimes some of the complaints that our persons have, they are not necessarily related to the vaccine itself. But once one receives the vaccine, they become very vigilant in terms of their signs and symptoms, and they might have a headache that would not have been associated with the vaccine at all. Or some persons, I've seen persons, for example, come to my office with different complaints. They would have noticed something that occurred after the vaccine but had no bearing at all on they received the vaccine, and what they needed really was just reassurance.
Okay, it's 8:28 on the 10th of May in the year of our Lord 2021. We've shut down our country last year, March, I think it was. We have reopened the economy. We have just recently reduced the quarantine period. What is the exact disposition as we speak in respect of the pandemic as it relates to St. Kitts, and how do you see us going forward from here on?
Okay, so the COVID-19 status within the Federation, basically we've reported 45 cases to date, 45 confirmed cases. 44 of these cases have fully recovered, and so at present we are only monitoring one active case.
Yes, and you spoke about what is the status. You mentioned that the country was shut down and then be reopened, and what has protected us really is the quarantine that we have enforced. We had the 14-day quarantine period, and you mentioned that we recently reduced it to 9. And one of the things we keep saying is that the ideal quarantine period is 14 days, and anything shorter than 14 days mean that we would be absorbing some risk. The quarantine period was recently reduced from 14 to 9, and some persons asked, well, why not 3, why not 4, why not 5? We have said that the average incubation period of the virus is about 4 to 5 days, and one can be tested on day 7, for example, and still be positive. Have a false negative. In other words, the test might come back negative when you're actually in fact positive. And studies have shown that there's about 19% of persons, even if they test negative on day 7, the following week they may have symptoms and test positive again. And so we decreased it to 19, knowing that if you have a negative test, 9, knowing that if you have a negative test on day 9, that is more likely to be a true negative. But anything shorter than that, without having a significant proportion of the population vaccinated, means that we would be increasing our risk of exposing our persons to the virus.
But can I add, the quarantine period is only reduced to 9 days for inbound air passengers who are fully vaccinated. Yeah? So if you are coming into the country and you are not fully vaccinated, your quarantine period still remains 14 days. And I want to use this opportunity to define what we mean by fully vaccinated. So someone is deemed fully vaccinated if they would have received the 2 doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech, the 2 doses of the Moderna vaccine, or if it is they are vaccinated utilizing the Johnson & Johnson 1 dose. And then 2 weeks would have to elapse between you're receiving the 2nd dose or the 1 dose for Johnson & Johnson and your date of travel. So an inbound traveler who is coming in tomorrow or today, who came into the country today, if you received your 2nd dose of the Pfizer-BioNTech 2 weeks ago, you would be deemed fully vaccinated, and so you can easily qualify for a reduction in your quarantine period from 14 days to 9 days.
So, I believe it is hard to say otherwise. Haven't been this successful in terms of the protocols, most of which are still in place. Now, the vaccination has been made available to the population. Yes, there is some hesitancy, right? But for those who are fully vaccinated coming back to St. Kitts, in some countries, for example, I believe Grenada, they do have their own different protocols. If you're fully vaccinated, I think that they test you on arrival, I believe, I stand corrected, perhaps the CMO Hazel can tell us differently, but they only have a 2-day quarantine, I believe, or something like that. Is that something we are looking forward to, not 2 days, but at least at some stage reducing the quarantine period? Now that is what everyone, especially those who are fully vaccinated and coming back home or visiting St. Kitts, are looking forward to.
Well,
Am I going ahead of myself?
I understand you, but we have to understand from the very onset, we have said that there is no one-size-fits-all approach as you manage this coronavirus disease. And a number of the Caribbean territories that have a shorter quarantine period, they have also had community spread. And St. Kitts is unique and different in that we have not, 1 year into the pandemic, had community spread. And so we are trying to prevent that from happening also. Okay, so for some of the countries that already had community spread and they're dealing with addressing infected persons in their community and having persons in their hospitals, they could relax their quarantine period. But we are at a point still where we are making sure that we try to keep this virus at bay. We do not overwhelm our healthcare system. And the longer we can keep that from happening and broaden our vaccination program, then the better it is for us. And so until we reach as close to herd immunity as possible, okay, once we don't have community spread, we'll have to continue with pretty extensive.
I also want to add that when you are fully vaccinated, it reduces your risk of picking up the infection, and by extension it reduces your risk of transmitting the infection from yourself, or transmitting the infection. And however, there is still an attendant risk, and so in St. Kitts and Nevis we have to be particular. We have to be very careful, because at present, based on the figures from end of work day today, we have only covered 41% of the target population with the first dose, and we've only fully vaccinated 2.8% of the target population. And so based on our present epidemiological context, we have to be very careful. And so that's why at this point in time, it's been reduced to 9 days. As when we attain a higher percentage, closer to the herd immunity threshold, then we can take it lower.
And let me just clarify something. So you said 2.8% of the population have received their second dose, but they're not really considered fully vaccinated as yet.
2 weeks has to pass before you're deemed fully vaccinated.
And the other point I want to make here, and the CMO can support me on this, one or two of the positive cases that we've had here were persons who were fully vaccinated.
Yes.
And if we did not have that policy in place where these persons needed to be quarantined, we would have been having significant community spread. You might have seen hospitalizations, and because our population is yet not protected by the vaccine, we might have even had some deaths.
And St. Kitts is not the only. So there are a number of Caribbean territories whereby they have confirmed COVID-19 in persons who are deemed fully vaccinated. So there's still an attendant risk.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You go ahead, we're listening to your question.
Yeah, and I spoke, for full disclosure, I had a brief discussion with you this afternoon, Cameron, right? And as you mentioned, the AstraZeneca and the different other vaccines. But let's speak to AstraZeneca, because we are administering that in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I believe it has an 80% or 83%.
Yes, 82.4, yes. Yes.
So 83. So am I right to say, and I'm not, mathematics is my strongest weak point. So if it has an 83% or 84% efficacy, right?
Yes.
So if you vaccinate, if that's the right term, or administer a vaccine to 100 people, then 16 or 17 of those can die or can be infected. Am I correct?
Not necessarily.
No.
In that the figures that are quoted are the figures in clinical trials. Okay? In other words, when they were doing the research, and so based on what you say, when they were doing the research, of 100 persons who got the vaccine, 83.4% of them were protected. But when you move from clinical trials to use a vaccine in the general population, the vaccine doesn't have to be 100% effective to have 100% effectiveness in the general population. We have been able to wipe out measles, mumps, and rubella without having a vaccine that was 100% effective in the clinical trials. But the more people who get vaccinated, the less the virus can move from one person to the other. And so you can have a vaccine that was only 83% effective in clinical trials, but the effectiveness when you put it in the general population can reach to 100%. You know, and I tell people all the time about the flu vaccines. The flu vaccines that we give move from 40 to 60%. You've never had a flu vaccine that has been higher than 60%, but yet in a number of our first world countries, they've been able to stop the flu from spreading by widespread vaccination of these persons. And so you just can't use that figure and extrapolate it into the general population and say, yes, 16 persons out of 100 will get the disease. You can have 100 persons and all of them become protected once you have, and that's where the concept of herd immunity comes in. So everyone doesn't have to get the vaccine, but those who can get it should get it so that they can protect those who can't.
And then based on data from the clinical trials, all persons who were vaccinated, they didn't end up in the hospital. So it prevented severe disease and it prevented hospitalization and death.
But you mentioned flu, and I think there's general consensus that this coronavirus will be always with us, at least in the short term. Will we have to get a coronavirus vaccine each year? Would that be recommended, or after this round of vaccines, you get your double dose, you're fully vaccinated, it's done?
And so that the scientific work in this regard continues. So basically what they are looking at is the effectiveness of the present vaccines against the variants, because I think that's the biggest challenge right now. So the vaccines are effective against the original SARS-CoV-2 virus, but now they are monitoring their effectiveness in terms of how effective is it against the variant identified in the UK, the variant identified in South Africa, Brazil, and then now within the last few weeks we've heard about the emerging variant coming out or identified in India, and that has a name, a double mutant. And so I think over the next few months we will hear more specifically if a booster shot would be required.
And you see the problem here, and as long as the virus is allowed to circulate and spread from one person to the other, it will change. And the virus is always trying to adapt itself so that it can increase its transmissibility. And sometimes with the increased transmissibility, you can have more severe disease. Some viruses, they become less severe. But until we can have widespread immunization and make sure that everyone is protected, you will continue to have these variants developing. And once these variants develop, they might not be as effective. The vaccines might not be as effective, and so that's why you may have to require booster shots in the future. But we are hoping that we can push forward with the vaccines, not just here but globally, and hopefully see the end of coronavirus sometime soon. You can see that in countries like the United States, the death rates is dropping, the number of cases is dropping with the increase in the vaccination rollout there.
What about animals? And I don't know if they have actually established, fully established the origin of this particular virus. But animals do have lots of viruses, and I've heard quite a lot about this zoonotic disease, I think it's called. Do you want to break that down for the ordinary man listening to Straight Talk, and we will have that and viruses coming in the future?
Well, there are some viruses that affect animals, same, not just viruses, bacteria, fungi, different things that affect animals. We have some that affect human beings. And if you have a germ that's normally in an animal and it crosses to human beings, then that's what's called a zoonotic infection. Okay, and we've had to deal with zoonotic infections over the years, like rabies, leptospirosis, Lyme disease. And when COVID-19 first started, it originated in Wuhan, China. That's when it was first identified, in Wuhan, China last year. And there was the talk initially that it started in bats and moved to human beings in these wet markets. I think China has been pushing back on that, and we are still waiting to hear the final word on where this virus actually started. Some persons have a theory that it started in a lab and got out, but we don't know, so we just have to wait and see. The most important thing is that we know what to do now to contain it.
So would you say that the world was unprepared for the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, the fact that it was allowed to become a pandemic, because there are a lot of diseases that start and they can, for example, Ebola could have become a pandemic if it was not handled correctly.
SARS,
etc.
MERS could have.
So I would say that we were blindsided, and part of the problem too is from the time when it occurred, right after the Chinese New Year, and the world is so interconnected. It doesn't take long for a virus to move from China, to the rest of the world, because you have flights interconnecting the entire globe. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I say that we were unprepared and blindsided.
Hindsight is 2020 vision, and basically we really watched the virus move from China, Europe, North America, then down. So basically, they should have curtailed travel sooner than it actually happened.
Now it's 40 minutes before the 9 o'clock hour. There's no Straight Talk without our callers. But before we open the lines, I want you to make any points that you would want to put out there, and I never gave you the opportunity to do so. I mean, for example, people may be wondering whether they can stop taking these safety precautions after getting the COVID-19 vaccine.
Yes.
There's also the view as well of the distribution, the comments about the distribution of the vaccines. And so I want to use this opportunity now, both of you. I'll give you some time to put your narrative outside there and what's important for us as a country, as a people, going forward before I open the lines.
The COVID-19 pandemic has caused significant illness and deaths throughout the world over the past 15 months. It has resulted in major economic, social, and educational disruptions. It has impacted all of us, and there's an urgent need for the development of and access to safe and effective vaccines. Here in the Federation, we've been successful in containing the virus. However, we are still in the middle of the pandemic, with deaths occurring in the OECS territories, almost 10,000 dead in the Caribbean region, and further afield. In India alone, over 22.6 million cases have been diagnosed and over 246,000 deaths reported. The hospitals are running out of oxygen, the morgues are overflowing. This situation is further complicated by emerging variants of public health concern. The good news is that there are safe and effective vaccines, and they are now available. This is the light at the end of the tunnel, and we have seen infection and death rates beginning to fall in countries with increasing numbers of their population vaccinated. Tonight, our aim is to share the information that we have about the COVID-19 vaccines. Our aim is to empower you, the people, to make the right choice.
Yeah, and I just want to say something briefly about herd immunity, because we've been hearing about this for quite some time, and the herd immunity threshold for COVID-19 is anywhere from 70 to 80%, and we have been pushing to see if we can get at least 70% of our population vaccinated. The interesting thing about the population of St. Kitts and Nevis is that at least 30% of the persons are below the age of 18, which means that our 70% is already defined for us. This is everybody who is above the age of 18. And so what we are really looking for then, if we are looking for herd immunity, is to get every adult vaccinated. We are at 40.1% of the that target population with the first dose. And I just want persons to know that you're not just vaccinating yourself for yourself alone. This is the first time in history where your singular action affects everyone else, and there are other persons who cannot take the vaccine, like those below the age of 18 or some of the elderly with multiple medical conditions who are not, who don't have a strong enough immune system to take the vaccine, and so they're dependent on you. So one cannot decide that you are a healthy 30-year-old and that you are going to choose to be in the 30%. That 30% is not for you. And so we're asking everyone to do the right thing. I get asked all the time, somebody will come and tell me, oh, I'm not going to take the vaccine because I have diabetes, or I have hypertension, or I have asthma. And these persons have to understand that these are the persons who really should be taking the vaccine. If we had a shortage of vaccines here in St. Kitts, those would be in the priority groups. And so if you have a condition where if you got COVID-19, you would be severely ill and may die because of the extra burden that COVID-19 will place on you, you are the ones who should be taking the vaccine. The only persons who the vaccine will not be given to, as we said here in the Federation, is if you're below the age of 18. We are not giving it to pregnant females. And if you're over the age of 18 with multiple medical conditions, we ask that you get clearance from your physician. Not that you cannot be vaccinated, but we ask that you get clearance from the physician. Because one of the things we say, if somebody is elderly and frail, sometimes just a little fever can push them over the edge and put them in the hospital. And so these are the persons who, if they're deemed not fit to take the vaccine, they will be protected by the herd, the stronger persons who went forward and rolled up their sleeves and took the vaccine.
I want to add that at present we are now offering the vaccine to mothers who are breastfeeding or lactating. I also want to add that the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine is not a live virus vaccine. Therefore, persons living with HIV may be vaccinated. I also want to add that immunocompromised persons may be vaccinated. Persons with autoimmune conditions may also be vaccinated.
Persons with allergies can be vaccinated, because some persons think that allergies are cross-reactive, in that if you're allergic to penicillin, you'll be allergic to the vaccine. No. It's not so at all, and so even if you have an allergy, you can be vaccinated.
I have severe allergies to shrimp, but I got my first dose, and come this week, Wednesday, I'm due to get my second dose.
Thank you very much. It's 8 minutes before the 9 o'clock hour. In the event you have just joined me, we have in studio with us Dr. Hazel Laws, our Chief Medical Officer, and Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, the Medical Chief of Staff at the Joseph N. France General Hospital. And what a team that had led the fight against the coronavirus-induced pandemic in St. Kitts and Nevis. There's no straight talk without your calls. So we are going to open the lines now, but I always like to implore you to respect yourselves, or respect others, I should say. And of course, to achieve that, you must first respect yourselves. Let us try to be fair to all concerned. Let us try to build goodwill and better friendships. Let us ensure that the things we say and not do will be beneficial to us. And in the process of doing and or saying those things, let us strive to build a kinder, gentler St. Kitts and Nevis. The numbers are 465-2555 and or 718-577-2916. There's some of us who like the cloak of anonymity, so we give you access via our email platform, which is zizstraghttalk@gmail.com. It's 6 before the 9 o'clock hour. The lines are open. I'll entertain your calls and your emails. And in the meantime, as we await our calls, perhaps I can ask, or let's go to the lines. As a matter of fact, let's take our calls, as many calls as possible tonight. I'll open the lines. Caller, you're live.
Hi, good night, Mr. Liburd, and good night,
Good night.
to the CMO and the Chief Medical Health at the hospital, Mr. Wilkerson.
Good night.
I'm calling
Good
to
night.
find out, right, if you have a date for 2012, you can't go a day before or 2 days before to get your vaccine.
Yes, you
Yes.
can, of course.
Yes,
Yes.
the vaccine schedule that we were using here is 10 weeks. You got your vaccine on your first day and you were given a date 10 weeks after. However, the efficacy is essentially the same between 8
To
weeks
12
to 12
weeks.
weeks. And so one has some latitude there. So you can go a little early, you can go a little late, but you can't go after 12 weeks.
Oh, okay then. I just wanted to know because my vaccine date had due Wednesday coming, and I went down today and I wanted to get it done today, but they're saying they cannot do it. Well, really too, I didn't have my card.
Oh.
You
Okay.
understand?
I think that's the reason why, but you
Yeah,
could get it
but
a few days
before I
before.
told them I didn't have the card, they told me that they can't do it. It has to be done on the day. It's scheduled. So I told them, no, 'cause I had spoke to you at the park. Remember when you had they had the open thing at the park about the carnival and what's not?
Yes.
And I did talk to you and they told me, even if you go when you come back after the day,
yes,
you could come
yes,
into
yes,
quarantine
I
and get
remember.
them. Yes.
Yes.
So you all need to let them know that is when like
Okay.
people are available. They don't have to come back exactly on the same day. That but once
Yes.
they come within the same time.
Yes, and there have been persons who have been going a little earlier, some have been going a little late. Okay,
Yes,
so that is no problem.
I went to there trying to get it done today. You understand? But I didn't really get it done. So
Okay,
I'll
well-
Okay,
go-
so I'll update the staff in this regard.
Yes, you need to let them know that if people come to give them, do not turn them back.
Which health center did you go?
I went to Baxter because Newton was full. Newton is where I did it the first time, 3rd of March. But Newton was rampacked today. So I went down to Bastille.
Okay.
Yeah, and they said that, they can't do it. You understand? But it's okay. I just wanted to know.
Okay, we'll make
And
sure
you
that
also
everyone
put
that
out
is
there that
clarified.
if somebody want to go before the time when they will be scheduled for. Okay then, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. We go back to the lines. Caller, you're live.
Yeah, good night. I have a similar question. If it's due for your second dose and you develop a cold or something, should you go and take it or could you wait a while till the cold passes? What's the position with that?
Okay, so if it is you're experiencing a fever because of the cold or an upper respiratory tract infection, it is recommended that you wait until the fever would have resolved and most of your symptoms, and then you can proceed and get your second dose.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. We go. Okay. Yes, we Go back to the lines. Call your line.
Hello?
Hello,
Yes.
caller.
Yeah, so we've been hearing that you must not take advice from a lot of the media and all these things, right? What I'm saying is this. These people are putting their faces out, telling us their names and are saying not to take the vaccine. Why is it nobody is prosecuting these people, making them prove their case? That's my argument, my question.
Well, I believe in a free society with freedom of speech, one is entitled to their own opinion. And so there are some persons who are labeled as anti-vaxxers who do not believe in vaccines, but that's not a crime as far as I know. And so there is no reason to prosecute someone if they don't believe in vaccines and they're advocating some anti-vaccine position. But what we keep telling you is that what we try to preach is the science, and let you know that we believe in science and we believe in vaccines, and that the vaccines are safe and effective, and that you need to get your information from a reputable source. Gone are the days where one went to the library into an encyclopedia for information. With the internet, etc. now, anyone can put anything out there, and so everyone has a voice, but you need to make sure that you listen to the reputable voices and do what is best. And so we are saying that the vaccines are safe and effective and you should take them.
I want to add that as a human being, I have stewardship over my body. You have stewardship over your body. And we all have a responsibility to be empowered, to get the required information about the COVID-19 vaccine, be empowered and make the right choice. Because at the end of the day, if perchance the virus comes back into the country and we have clusters of cases and community transmission like what is happening in Anguilla, you would be exposed to the virus. You'll be exposed to COVID, severe COVID. You may even be admitted. So at the end of the day, it comes down to your having stewardship, management over your body, and you have to make the right decision for you. You cannot allow a negative influencer to deter you from doing what's right.
And the other point to be made here is that for those of us who are rolling up our sleeves and taking the vaccine, we're actually doing it also to protect those persons who are against the vaccine and who are preaching that you should not take it, because the only how they're going to be protected when the virus comes is if we have a significant proportion of persons who are vaccinated. What we don't want to see, however, is that the virus reaches back here and a significant proportion of the population is not protected, and we start to see severe disease and death.
We have done a very good job in keeping the virus out and containing it. However, it's just a matter of time before it's reintroduced into our federation. It's just a matter of time before there will be clusters of cases, because we can't keep it out forever. And so that's why we are racing against time to get as many persons as possible vaccinated, so that you will have indirect protection for the vulnerable, so that we won't have community spread like our sister islands.
There's the next call.
Okay, let's go back to lines. What we're going to do, we're going to take a few calls, perhaps, and note the questions, and then we provide some answers, so we can get in as many callers as possible. Caller, you're live.
Yeah, good night. First thing first, I just want to say thanks to everybody. And I congratulate the panelists for doing such a good job. But I just have a question of concern or something I would like you guys to look into for me. So I work at the industrial site, and when we first started, I was first allowed to go back to work, we had a restriction where if you go to work, you'd have to stay inside of the workplace for the duration of the day. At first, it was okay, it was something that we could have worked with. But now it comes to the point where you are trapped at work for basically 8 hours. You don't have the ability to take a proper break. You're hindered from leaving the building. And, regular life, we pay bills, and you don't have the opportunity to do that in your lunch break. So me personally, was just wondering, I was just hoping that somebody would be able to look into this to see if or when this restriction would be lightened as we are going into the phase of doing vaccines and eating up the restrictions on the Federation per se.
Do you want to dispense of that question?
Say that again?
Yes.
We'll get a response to your caller. I'll have them respond. Do you want to?
Yes, I will. So basically, this measure was recommended in an attempt to reduce the risk of exposure of the worker to the virus. Because working in a manufacturing company, you have a big number of persons working in a relatively small space, and so if perchance somebody is infected, the risk of spread in that environment is very easy. And so that's why it was recommended you come into work and you remain until at the end of the workday to reduce the risk of introducing the virus into such a setting. And so the recommendation remains in place until again we achieve the herd immunity threshold. And so I want to show the link between our aim of achieving that and the relaxation of the measures that will come or will follow if we are successful in reaching the herd immunity threshold.
And just to add, because what the caller is basically asking is, when are we going to get back to normal in the factory, in our life, etc. And the sooner more of us get vaccinated is the sooner we can get back there. And so I want to urge him, if he hasn't, to go and get the vaccine, and to encourage every single person working on the industrial site in the factory that he's in to get vaccinated so that they can move about in near normalcy at that factory.
What I would add, if perchance you have a manufacturing company and almost 100% of the workers are vaccinated, we can probably think about some relaxation with regards to this recommendation.
Okay, thanks a lot. We go back to the lines. Caller, you live.
Good evening, Uncle Patches. And you two angel you have there sitting with you, corresponding with you. Well, I get my second job today, and I never had no problem at all.
Congratulations.
I was waiting around to see who won the one, so I could have get the rest of them. But when I see a lot of people come in, I say, well, this thing really working. You understand me? But what I don't like, doctor, the two doctors there, the two angel doctors, right? Now, I notice a lot of people from the army come there, and from the prison, and from some of the police force son. I don't think that was fair. I was up in Newtown. I wait there from since 12:30. I leave there after 2 or after 2 something. I find you should have got them people vaccinated up the camp, up the police force, into the prison. They should not be down there depriving people who down there. And when they come, they're going up in front of the line. And they're getting celebrity service. You understand me? I was a king. I know arguing. I just want to make sure I come king again this year. So that's when I went back for me shot them,
Understand.
And I could tell you all, Doc, it's working, and God bless all you. Don't care what people will say. Who want to wait for them from Cuba? Who want to wait for them from Russia? Who want to wait for them from all over the place where they wait? They better grab what they could grab now. And you need to look at what the Prime Minister of Dominica, what he named, the Skerritt, and see the statement, what he put out with the people, and you all will learn a lesson from that. God bless you all. Patches, you have a nice night. And keep on doing the good work all you're doing. Okay? All right. Thank you all.
Have a nice
Thank you. I want to thank you for that recommendation in terms of the prisoners and the police coming in to the health center. So we would look into that and improve that, so that persons like yourself, once you come in for your second dose, it will be seamless. So thank you for that recommendation.
As a matter of fact, we've been trying to go to institutions, etc. Once they have a fair number of persons. So we definitely have to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for holding, caller. You're live.
Good night, I am.
Yes, you are.
Okay, Mr.
Yes, you are.
Mr. Liburd, how are you?
I am peaceful. Yourself?
How was your weekend?
I got my job. And I'm feeling strong.
Okay, mine will be next month. Anyway, I want to commend you for that the two good doctors. The name that I will say wonderful, right? And they did a very good job. So, and the next time, you can get other people coming to inform people, not COVID alone, but different groups, you know what I mean? And I want to find, I hear something on the news, but don't know how to put it. Other countries have saying that they pay people to take vaccine. So I don't know if it's that they mean, but I ain't think somebody's supposed to get no pay. Otherwise, everybody's supposed to get paid from like that. What I want to take it is the business, because every day they're talking and they see what's going on in the outer world. Not because we're small. Small is nothing to do with that debt. And the Prime Minister from Gaston Brown make it so clear. And we Prime Minister, oh, what a wonderful Prime Minister, look at those two people. Make it clear too. So who don't want, when the time comes, they run up and down like when fowls lose their head. Okay, good night, have a good night. And the doctors, Miss Stars, good night. This is your friend from the market.
Oh, good night, good night.
All right. Tell mommy hello.
I will.
All right.
Okay. I'll have you respond to that question. Let's take this other call. Caller, you're live.
Yes, good night. Good night.
Good night, sir.
Okay. I've got two little questions. One, when the nurses or the doctors will be dealing with people like with disability who can't move. And the second question, I like it if you having any sulfur in it. That's my two questions, please. Thank you.
What's the second?
If the vaccine has any sulfite.
Oh.
Okay, we'll get back to that. Is there another caller? Let's take this caller. Call your line. Okay, let's respond to that question. Or the questions about incentives to take the vaccine, and whether how do we provide access to those who are physically challenged, and is there any sulfur in the vaccines? Anyone?
Okay, well, let me start with the contents of the vaccine. There is no sulfur in the vaccine. The AstraZeneca vaccine that we have here, apart from the viral particle that helps to generate the immune response, it has a compound called histidine, magnesium chloride, ethanol, a sugar, sucrose, sodium chloride that all of us are exposed to, water for injection, and there's something called polysorbate 80. And this is the only ingredient that a very, very, very small percentage of persons might be allergic to. Okay, and that's why we say, look, even persons who have allergies to other agents like sulfur, penicillin, they can take the vaccine. As it relates to persons who are shut in and we want to take the vaccine, Dr. Laws, I'll let you address that.
So basically the Ministry of Health is looking into this, but what I can say is if you have a shut-in or somebody who is disabled and at home and they're ready for the vaccine, all you have to do is share this information with the nurse manager at the nearest health center, and it will be the vaccine will be administered to that individual. So that's not a problem.
And there are different approaches to getting persons to take the vaccine. Some persons can restrict the movement of persons who are not vaccinated. Other persons might opt to give incentive to persons to get them vaccinated, and the incentives can come in different ways. And yes, there are some countries that are offering monetary incentives. I don't think that we are at that stage.
No.
Yes, okay. So far we have gotten persons to come forward willingly and take the vaccine, and we continue to appeal to persons to do the right thing and protect themselves and to protect others.
But the Ministry of Health is very facilitating when it comes to the administration of the vaccine. And so if there is a special circumstance, somebody who is disabled, whatever it is, just bring it to our attention and we will facilitate the administration of the vaccine to such individuals.
Okay, it's 14 past the 9 o'clock hour. In the event you have just joined me, we have in studio the doctors of today, Dr. Hazel Laws, our Chief Medical Officer, and Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, our Medical Chief of Staff, and we are discussing our own disposition here in St. Kitts and Nevis as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic. Caller, you're live. I want to thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening. We've been hearing, well, I joined the program rather late, but so we've been hearing a lot about blood clots associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine. I've just asked if the doctors there can speak to this, if it is actually factual or if it is actually associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. Early on, we heard about blood clots associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine, and in Europe, out of 34 million persons who had received the vaccine, they had about 220 persons who had clots. But when the investigation was done, these clots were not directly associated with the vaccine itself. But even if it were that these 220 plus clots were a direct result of the vaccine, at that point in time it would have meant that the incidence would have been like 1 to 1.5 million. And we have to understand that clots are pretty common. Persons were getting clots before the vaccine, persons will get clot even after the vaccine. And DVTs, etc., they are common annually. About 1 in 1,000 persons get a clot every year. When persons fly, about 2 out of 100 persons might develop a clot if they're on a long flight. If somebody is in bed for a long time because they're hospitalized, the incidence of a blood clot could be about 2 to 10%. Even in pregnancy, 1 to 2 out of 1,000 persons might get a blood clot. And so clotting itself is not an uncommon phenomenon. However, the risk associated with one getting a clot from the vaccine, it is very, 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 very negligible. And so far, the AstraZeneca vaccine is the vaccine of choice in a number of countries across the globe. It's the vaccine of choice across the Caribbean. So far, we've had more than 14,000 doses administered here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and everybody has been fine. And so I can assure you that you don't have to worry as it relates to the development of clots and the vaccine, because the risk is negligible.
While on that, Cameron, is a vaccine of choice, as you said. What's the rationale? Is it the cost or the storage? Why is that so?
Well, we heard about the COVAX facility early on, where the World Health Organization had a plan to ensure that the vaccine was available to every single country across the globe, and the plan was to have at least 20% of the entire world's population vaccinated so we can at least halt the crisis. And of course, if you're going to have a vaccine that's going to be used throughout the world, it needs to be accessible. It needs to be affordable. And the AstraZeneca vaccine fit that match because of the vaccines that came on board early on. Don't forget it was AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna. And the AstraZeneca could have been stored at room temperature, at refrigerator temperature, whereas the Pfizer and the Moderna required special freezers. And so even in the great United States, they could not get this vaccine distributed to a number of communities in the United States itself. As a matter of fact, recently Pfizer had applied to get authorization to have it stored at refrigerator temperature. And so that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, and as I said before, the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine is utilized in over 148 countries globally. So it is the vaccine that has the widest global reach.
Okay, we go back to the lines. It's 19 past 9 o'clock. Caller, I want to thank you for holding your line.
I want to speak in terms of the benefits of vaccine. If we had a simple case like mumps, the few people in this population were infertile. They can't make babies because of mumps infection. But what has protected so many people against that is that the MMR vaccine, which part of it is against mumps, has helped in preventing people from being exposed to that infertility. So while some people have a strong anti-vaccine campaign, they need to know that vaccines can have tremendous benefits. Yes, thank you very much.
Vaccines have saved millions of lives every year. Vaccines work.
Yes, and
okay, let's go back to the lines. Call your line. Hello, caller. Are you there, caller? Yes, you're live.
Yeah, good night. This is Sugar out of West Palm Beach. Thank you.
Yes, Sugar.
And let me say good night to the two doctors out there. Thank you to some good doctors, the best doctor in the world. Let me say good night to him. And the vaccine that are here that they're not taking, they're waiting on the Cuban vaccine. But it's amazing to see that they're waiting on a vaccine that is not there. And the one that are here, they're not taking it. So, let me say good night to Culture over here. And good night to your girl, Catilda. The two doctors, the two best doctors, good night to you all.
Good night.
Yes, this is Sugar. Dr. Wilkerson, know the voice?
Yes, of course.
Oh, it's not.
I know exactly what I'm talking to. And
we have another caller.
Good night.
Let's go back to the lines, caller.
And how are you? I'm calling from St. Thomas.
I am peaceful.
Okay.
How are you?
I find that we black people, I don't know, we don't think for ourselves. I don't take my vaccine about a month ago. And I feel so fine. I even tell my children back home, you all need to take the vaccine. But it's them for they all gone. And when I was in the line, is a lot of white people. Me was the only black person in the line. I'm calling from St. Thomas. And they need to go take the vaccine. They're listening to the news. What's going on out there? Because the vaccine is not working now. Because the vaccine is not working for us. The staff now are listening to the news. Now they're talking about passport. So children have to get a passport to travel, a vaccine passport. I don't know what's happening to my people back home. You don't want a month from since I don't take my line, I'm feeling so fine. You have to do what you have to do. They need to listen to news, because I saw it for a lot of them. Okay, you have a great day, and the doctors them here.
Okay, and I just want to make a point about this waiting for the vaccine, and some persons say they're waiting for the Cuban vaccine. The Cuban vaccine has not cleared all of the clinical trials as yet, and so it has no authorization by the World Health Organization to be used in the general public. And so yes, if the Cuban vaccine comes on board and it's available and you want to have it, I guess you can have it. But right now the platform that we have is the AstraZeneca vaccine that is being bought in by the government. I even have persons ask me, can I bring in the Pfizer vaccine? Well, if you think that you can go to Pfizer and order a few doses and get it shipped down here on a special refrigerator, you can do that, but it is not really practical. It's almost even difficult for even a Caribbean country to go to Pfizer and try and see if they can buy 50,000 doses.
Not even entertaining.
Yeah, you won't even be entertained. And so the vaccine that we have is the AstraZeneca that has been shown to be safe and effective. And so there is no reason for you to be saying you're waiting for something that is not available when you have one that can save your life now.
What would you say, Doctor Cameron? Are they going to be waiting to win? In other words, would the Ministry of Health procure the Cuban vaccine if it passed the clinical trials?
Well, and the answer to that is once we will consider vaccines that have achieved the World Health Organization emergency use listing. So right now Cuba has about 4 to 5 vaccines under production. Now these are protein vaccines. They are very promising, but then the scientist tells you that the Cubans took time to understand the virus, to understand the disease before they started. So they started late. And so there are a number of months before we can have access to the Cuban vaccines because they have not completed the phase 3 trials as yet. And so right now they are vaccinated. There are persons at home in Cuba to see how the vaccine works. They are collaborating with Iran, Venezuela, Mexico, just to name a few. They're collaborating with other countries in order to get their phase 3 trials completed so that we can even know what the efficacy of these vaccines are. So a lot of information is still left to be known about the vaccine candidates coming out of Cuba. So it's going to be a few months before they would have achieved emergency use listing anywhere in the world.
And we have to be careful with fake news mixed in with some truth, because I've seen things being circulated. Oh, the Cuban vaccine was approved by the World Health Organization and it's available, it's going to be here next week, etc. That is not so, and one can easily go to the World Health Organization site and check that information. And I've seen that information being circulated even by supposedly reputable news agencies here. And that is not so. And one is not pitting one vaccine against the other at all. If there's a vaccine from Cuba that's approved and we have access to it, of course we will offer.
Yes.
But for now, it's not.
Okay, it's 9:26. I want to thank you for holding caller. You're live. Yes, caller? Okay, while we await that other call, Cameron Hazel, there are some people who are spreading this what can I say, false news as well, that the COVID-19 vaccine can give you the COVID-19 disease. Is that accurate? Or false?
That is false. The vaccines, they are not live viruses, and one cannot get the disease from the vaccine. What we have to know, though, is that once you get vaccinated, you will generate antibodies. And if you use one of the antibody tests, which we don't use here, you can get a false positive because it will be telling you that you have antibodies. But the vaccine cannot give you COVID-19 disease. It's important for you to know too that you don't become fully immune until 2 weeks after you've received your second dose. And so even after your first dose and even after your second dose, you can still get COVID-19 disease. And that's why we say time is of an essence, and the sooner you get fully vaccinated, the sooner you're 2 weeks out from your last shot, the more protected you will be.
Okay, so we go back to the lines. Caller. Okay, before, well, there's no one on the line, but you just mentioned tell us how the vaccine works in terms of how it's really generates, right? There's some reactions.
Didn't hear you at all. You have to repeat yourself, Ian. You were breaking up there.
Yes, we were talking about the immunity and the period that it takes to reach there. But there's some people who take the vaccine and then they get a fever, they get different reactions, right? Because of the particular vaccine. Tell us how it really works, just for the ordinary man on the street.
Well, when one becomes infected with a virus, if you don't have antibodies or cells in your body to fight this virus and eliminate it, you can get severely ill from this virus. And the way all vaccines work is it helps to prime your immune system so that your body would register the antigens or particles from the virus and develop antibodies such that when you come in contact with the real infecting organism, you can eliminate it by having these antibodies and other cellular activities going into play to eliminate the virus from your body. And that's the way most of these vaccines work. The AstraZeneca vaccine is what's called a viral transport antigen vaccine, and so when one is vaccinated, they will develop antibodies to the spike protein, so that when you come in contact with the real virus, these antibodies will be produced to eliminate the virus and prevent you from getting severely ill or from dying from the vaccine, from the virus.
So the COVID-19 vaccine doesn't give you the actual symptoms of the disease.
Okay, is there another call on the line? Let's
now.
Okay. I read something today, Cameron and Hazel, right? From Greg Gray, Dr. Gray, and an Anfal Abdelgadir from the Duke Global Health Institute in an open forum, infectious diseases. And it reads, and I quote, is a growing demand for innovative and cost-effective approaches to surveil for the next novel respiratory virus threat. It says we need to mitigate novel respiratory virus threats before they fully adapt to humans and become highly transmissible. And the most strategic approach, it continues, would be directing periodic novel respiratory virus surveillance at the human-animal interface, studying both animal workers and their animals. What's your reaction to that?
Just repeat your last one because you were breaking up. Ian.
It says that there need to be, the most strategic approach would be directing periodic novel respiratory virus surveillance at human-animal interface, studying both animal workers and their animals.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if one were to even look back a year or two before this pandemic started, you would have noted that Barack Obama had a pandemic team in place that was disbanded. And basically, what we were saying even back then is that we have to be on alert for these viruses that can emerge, these viruses that can jump from from animals to human beings. And we need to make sure that we have the things in place to prevent any widespread spread of these viruses if they do cross human beings. And so that's one of the reasons why we have surveillance in place also. And so if, for example, at any point in the world where we notice that persons are coming down with unusual fevers, cough, etc., it's important for us to have things in place to contain these persons and prevent the global spread. And with the world being so interconnected, that's even more important now. And so I support what the writer said, that we have to be on our P's and Q's and make sure that a pandemic like this doesn't happen again, but we will be continue to be threatened. And with deforestation and man moving into territories that they were not accustomed to be before, we will be coming into contact with other viruses, other animals that we were not in contact with, and we need to make sure that we know how to contain them.
And so that's why each country, each territory is required to have a robust surveillance system, one that works, one in which you can pick up the occurrence of any unusual disease early, identify the cases and examine, test, such that you can contain the infection and prevent an outbreak. And so it's important for every country like ours to have a robust surveillance system. And so that's why locally here in the Federation we are continuously strengthening our surveillance system.
And Ian, while we're waiting on a call, I just want to touch briefly on what's happening in Seychelles, because Seychelles, we said, is the country that is most vaccinated. About 62.2% of the population is fully vaccinated. But despite that, they are currently having an outbreak, and from April 28 to today they had over 400 plus cases. What's interesting though is that 2/3 of the persons who came down with the disease, these are persons who had only one dose or had not received any vaccination at all. And the point I want to make is one can get to herd immunity or close to herd immunity, but if we have one or two persons in the community who are not vaccinated, they can undo everything that we work so hard to attain. And so it's important for us to try and get as many persons vaccinated as possible. Somebody's on the line.
Okay, it's 9:36. Alva, if you hear me, I'm getting a feedback from one of those mics there. If you can address it. But let's go over to the lines. Caller, thank you for holding your line.
Yeah, good night, Mr. Liburd.
Good night, sir.
Yeah, I have a question, right? At one time I heard, like on a different media, where the vaccine that they're distributing now for the coronavirus, that this vaccine is designated just to fight this coronavirus only. So like if you're getting any other kind of sickness or anything like that, your immune system, because this vaccine will destroy your natural, you put it, like your natural immune cells that normally fight our virus.
That's not true, caller.
No.
That's not true at all, and I don't want to spread him. No, that's not true.
No.
That is totally false.
No, because this is not, there's so many negativeness out there.
Yes, I understand, and I try not to let the negative spread also, and that's why I'm interjecting here right now. That is totally and completely false. The vaccine does not destroy your immune system. The vaccine helps you to build your immune system to fight off the COVID-19 disease. Okay?
Okay, nice.
Go back to the lines. Call your line.
Me again, I'm back. You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What
Yes,
I want
we hear
to
you.
say. What I want to say is the civil servant who don't want our wonderful Prime Minister don't want to go, it's a matter to them. And when anything happens to them, they can't vex with him because all of them they are working with him and they want him. Well, who put the government there and want to work too? See you. Good night. Have a safe wherever you're going to go, whether in a hotel or in a house. See you next time.
Thank you. You go straight back to the lines. Call your line.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Laws and Dr. Lawrence. I'm calling to ask two questions. My first question is, an observation on having my first shot. I thought that someone would have taken my temperature before because, sometimes we are not aware that we have a temperature. So I'm asking, is that necessary? My second question is, if you got your first shot, because nobody know what the future will hold, so you got your first shot, and coming up to your 10 weeks, you fall ill, so you have to wait until maybe the 11th week. Would that be workable? Would your body still, what should I say now?
Yes. Actually, the dosing schedule is 8 to 12 weeks. And so here in St. Kitts, you get your first shot, you're given an appointment to come back in 10 weeks' time. However, you can come back the 11th week or up to the 12th week for your second shot. So you do not have to come exactly at the 10-week mark. You could come a week after, up to 2 weeks after your appointment to get your second shot. And it's not absolutely necessary for the nurse to actually take your temperature before you get your first shot. You pretty much know if you are ill or if you have a fever, basically.
Yes, and you see, we speak about personal responsibility. For example, today at some of the health centers, we vaccinated a total of 332 persons, I think it was, between their first and second doses. And it's a lot of work for the nurses, and they cannot really check every single person's temperature. But we tell you, though, that if you are having flu-like illnesses, etc., prior, then you can choose to come a day or two later.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, lady and gentlemen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Now, there's a Facebook question as well I have, and perhaps you just address it, but just to be certain. In the UK, they have waited 12 weeks between the first and second doses. Would this be the process followed here in the Federation? I think you answered that, but just in case, please.
Yes, so at present you are given a 10-week appointment to come back for your second dose, but as I said before, you can come back on the 11th week or up to 12. You can come back 1 week after or up to 2 weeks after for your second shot.
Or you can even have it before.
Or you can have it before.
Yes, you can have it anyway.
A number of persons have come before. Some persons have had to go overseas for funerals, etc., and they opted to take their second shot like a week or two before it was actually due. And so that's also possible. So the minimum time is a month, and the maximum time span between first and second dose is 12 weeks. So you can get your second shot anywhere between 1 month after your first dose to 12 weeks after.
About over-the-counter pain medication before or after getting the COVID-19 vaccine. Any wasn't that advice?
Yes. So when I got my first shot, I by about 7 o'clock in the evening I developed chills and a low-grade fever, and it responded quite well to just simple acetaminophen or Panadol over-the-counter antipyretic or anti-fever medication. And so yes, persons who develop symptoms of this nature can benefit from using just simple over-the-counter anti-fever medication.
What is not generally recommended, however, is that you load upon these before, because there are some persons who prior to going for the vaccine, they assume that they might have a fever and they start to load upon paracetamol, Voltaren, etc. I suggest that you take the vaccine. You may or may not have any symptoms, and if you have the symptoms of the fever, then you treat it symptomatically with the over-the-counter medication.
What about a good glass of Merlot or a good lager coming after or before the vaccine?
You're talking about before or after?
Or after?
As a matter of fact, there's a New York Times article that came out about a week and a half ago that says you have to be careful the amount or the volume of the Merlot or the vodka after taking the vaccine. So a little you can have, but not too much.
Everything is in moderation. Everything is in moderation.
Let's go back to the lines. Call your line. Thank you for holding.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Good night.
I asked a question earlier, right? When you answer the question, what you're telling me is that if somebody is spreading rumors and endangering the lives of other people, nothing can be done about that. I'm listening off you.
No, what we're saying is persons can have a different point of view, and so if I say there's an urgency in getting the vaccine and someone says they prefer to wait, I have to respect that person's opinion. And so I don't think that person can be prosecuted. If I say that the vaccine is safe and effective and the person read somewhere else that it was not, then we can have a debate about it. But I don't think that that person should be victimized or prosecuted because of their view. There are some persons who believe the wrong thing genuinely the same way we believe the truth
right,
and the right thing. And so what we have to have is an open discussion and debate. And I can tell you that in the few months that we've been rolling out the vaccine, I've had a number of persons who were totally against the vaccine who have come around with reasoning and been presented with the scientific evidence. You know, I've had persons who have come and told me that they believe that the vaccine was designed to sterilize the black race, but they still complain, when they go to the health centers, they're seeing a lot of white people. So I said, well, how does that make sense? And then they would say, and their eyes open up. And so we just need to be able to sit down and understand that we can have a difference of opinion, and hopefully we'll be able to win these persons over. But I don't think that there is any space for prosecuting anybody because they have a difference of opinion. Yes.
Also, okay, let's go back to the lines, caller. Call your line.
Sound.
Hello, caller. Okay, there's a Facebook question I also have. It reads, why we in the US go back 21 days after the first dose?
Pfizer-BioNTech.
Any response to the question?
Yes, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine is offered in the United States of America, and the dosing schedule is that you get your second dose within 3 weeks of the first dose.
And there's also an email question here. This reads, good night, Patches. I find it strange that the nurses are not putting on their gloves when they are administering the vaccine. Why?
Well, one does not have to wear gloves when they're having these mass vaccination programs. Even the World Health Organization does not say that it is recommended. It's a deep intramuscular injection via a very small needle, and there is no risk of contamination from any body fluids. And one of the ways you can look at it, if we had immunized more than 268 million persons already with the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, if one was wearing a glove for every single one, that's 268 million plastic gloves that would be going into our environment, you know, and so there is no real reason to wear gloves in these mass vaccination programs.
So actually our nurses are following the international standard and international best practice in administering the vaccines at present.
Yes.
Let's go back to the lines. Caller, I want to thank you for holding your line.
Hello, good evening, Patrick. Now,
good evening, sir.
Yeah, what I went today when I went to take mine, I see Dr. Martin, and he come up to take his one. So I was looking for him to go back and get his farmer pass and bring him. But when he leave, he looked like he was so happy to get second dose, so he ain't bother come back. But I thought you guys his farmer pass and bring him. One who say water in the vaccine, you know. So, but everything was good today, and I tell you, you all are doing a good job, and God bless all you. God bless the Prime Minister and the Cabinet for all these efforts and the trials you made to make sure the country is safe. So who don't want to take? They're going to come when they're going to want it, and they're going to can't afford it. And that's all I have to say. You all should not worry about yourself, or you are exhausted by talking to them, and then on a stick break in the ear. And you know, grandmother used to say, if you don't hear by the ear, they hear by the butt. So, good night to everybody.
Good night, caller. This email message is to the two doctors, and it reads, and I quote, I find that we do not understand to each his own. I have read too much about all, and I repeat, all the vaccines have problems, and I think that it is our right to decide whether or not we want to take the vaccine. It is my body, and I do what I want with it, and my children think the very same way. If we take aspirins, 80 milligrams or 100 milligrams, this would be just as good as any vaccine.
Well, I disagree with that in that this virus is different in that if, for example, somebody has diabetes or hypertension and they refuse to take their medication, that decision will only affect them and they alone. However, when you have a virus like this that is so highly contagious, if you choose not to protect yourself, your actions can be affecting other persons also. That is why, for example, with the non-pharmaceuticals, you could not go out and decide to enter a business place without a mask. You could not decide that you were not going to social distance. You could not decide that you were not going to hand sanitize, because although those measures would have protected you, if you didn't do it, you could infect someone else. And so we are saying that the vaccine, it not only protects you, but it protects the persons who are around you, protect the vulnerable, the persons who cannot protect themselves, and it prevents you from transmitting the disease. And yes, you can make that personal decision. One at this point in time cannot force you, but there are going to be consequences down the line. We hear all the time people talking about vaccine passports. It's only a matter of time before you hear that it would be required for you to travel. It would be required for you to work in certain places, because if you are working in the tourism industry and you are not vaccinated, then you would have to be tested on a regular basis, because if you're a frontline worker, you would be at risk of spreading the disease to other persons. And We know in the past, if you were going to go to college, etc., you had to show your vaccination card, and it might get to that. We don't know what the future holds, but we're telling you that the vaccine is safe, the vaccine is effective, and we encourage you to take it voluntarily.
I want to just use examples, all right? It's my body, and I can choose not to take the vaccine. However, my job may be a high-risk job whereby I'm exposed to it at the front desk of a hotel, or I may be one of the attendants cleaning a hotel room. And then you can take the virus home to your loved ones. It may be your mom who has diabetes. It may be your father who has an autoimmune disease. And then the COVID-19 can then impact them severely. And so, yes, it's your body. You have a right to determine what you give consent to. However, if you choose not to take the vaccine, you can be putting your family and your loved ones at risk when we do go into community spread or have clusters of cases. Because it's an infectious disease, and your choice can impact not only yourself, but your loved ones who live in the same household, and it affects your community, your workplace. Persons do not realize that choosing to take the vaccine, you are helping to keep our children in the classroom. Because if more of us as adults take the vaccine, you're going to be reducing the risk of community transmission, reducing the risk of our going into a lockdown, and keeping our children in the classroom.
And I'm glad that you mentioned lockdown, because we keep saying the vaccine, you can take it voluntarily. However, if we have community spread, as like what was happening in Anguilla, we would have to go into a lockdown, and lockdowns are mandatory, because that is the only how we can stop the virus from spreading from one person to the other, to make sure that human beings do not move, because the virus cannot move without you. And so you have a responsibility to play in this fight, and saying that taking the vaccine is the same as taking aspirin, that is totally and completely false.
It's 5 before the 10 o'clock hour. As we wind down, you may have just joined us. You're coming at the tail end of presentations from our two stalwarts, medical stalwarts here, Dr. Laws and Dr. Wilkinson. As we go back to the lines, caller, you're live. Thank you for holding.
Hi, most pleasant good night. Mr. Liburd, how are you doing?
I am peaceful.
Okay, the US line ain't working, so I don't make it short and sweet on top the straight car. This is Pat calling from St. Thomas. Good night, Dr. Wilkerson. Good night, Dr. Laws. Good job. Keep up the good work. And I'm telling you all, okay, you ever heard the old people say you could carry a cow to the top, but you can't make them drink? And it's not the cattle that bawl for water that drink the water. It's the people who beat the most, discourage people a lot. Now, I'm living in the Virgin Islands, and I had my 2 shots. And I'm going to make it straight and clear quick. I will show you how people spread rumors and put wrong rumors in other people and discourage people from doing what they have to do. I had a small TIA on the 26th of December. The 26th of April. As soon as I closed my door behind me and step off my porch and go in the street to go to work, I took in with a small TIA. And I went to the emergency room 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was discharged like for something. Because the doctors them say, everything for me was perfect. They don't know where that TIA came from. But wherever it came from, it was scary, very scary. But to God be glory, great things are done. The TIA didn't do no damage to me, which is a small stroke. And what I'm saying, the next day I was due for my second shot on the 27th. And I spoke to my doctor, Dr. Thomas, and I said, Dr. Thomas, I have to go and get my second shot tomorrow. He said, Miss Lewis, you can go and get your shot. We didn't give you no medication. You didn't diagnose with, you had a small TIA, but your pressure is good, your heart is good, your oxygen is good, your brains is good, everything that you did on you is good. Your glucose, everything is good, but we don't know where that TIA came from. So you're good to go and get your shot. So I went the next day, my son took me to UVI to get my second shot the next day. And I went down there and the doctor who was on duty at the UVI for people who get in shot, I showed them the paperwork from the emergency room and she read it. And she said, but Miss Lewis, you look good and everything for you is good. So what caused the TIA? I said, I don't know. She said, go ahead and get your shot. I get my shot and I was good. I didn't have no side effects or anything. I'm not saying that everybody's body is alike. But then I said that to say this. People walking with my name down here saying that I had the COVID vaccine and I get a stroke from the COVID vaccine. And that's a lie because you know what's so sweet about it? I took sick the 26th and I take my shot on the 27th. I'm encouraging people to go and take the shot for your own good and your family good. You all have a pleasant good night. And Patricia already had she 2 shots and I'm feeling good and I'm out working. To God be the glory, great things have done. Keep up the good work. To the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis and his entire crew and everyone of St. Kitts and Nevis, I love you all. Take care, do what you have to do. God bless you all. God bless the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your experience.
And thank you. Now, as we wind down, I perhaps will take one more call. Because we've detained our doctors for like 2 hours. So I'll perhaps take this call and make it my final call for the night. Caller, you're live.
Good night, Patrick. This is Dumpling.
Good night.
I would like to tell my doctor how much I love him. After God is He. I went through him with 4 operations and he looked after me very, very good. Don't mind what people that say about him. He's a poor man and he's from St. Kitts. But when rich doctors come from abroad, they say all kind of things about this stuff. But as they don't want to bring down Dr. Wilkerson down to the light. But he's from St. Kitts and who ain't loving? Don't love him. Anyhow, Patrick, I went and I took my vaccine. I had a pain in my left hand. And from the time they give me the vaccine in the left hand, I decided I'm going to take it in here. And when I don't take the vaccine, I couldn't have put up my hand. I couldn't have even wear bracelet if I go in town. Because how I feel with this pain from my shoulder come down. I don't went to my heart and the pain gone. It's gone. Me had no headache, no fever, nothing. So this coach telling people what don't take the vaccine, like my doctor have a lab test to make vaccine. I want to let you guys up boardwalk and the Prime Minister. Doc, you and the other lady there, whatever God put in all your head, continue. Don't love you all. See you. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Well, you can't want a better endorsement than from Lydia Dumpling Manners. And we'll make that our final call for tonight. And perhaps I will ask you this final question for the night as well, my doctors. And we've heard so much about the CDC and in terms of what they are saying about people who are fully vaccinated and the need to move the mask, or in certain environments you don't use it, but at least change the protocols. So I'm asking you in that context, what changes can we expect to our own protocols as we move towards herd immunity, and perhaps you can give us some timelines as well as in terms of predictions to get to that situation in terms of herd immunity and our attempt to reopen our economy and get some semblance of normalcy back in St. Kitts and Nevis.
All right, so at present...
In response to that, you can also give your final wrap as well.
Okay, so at present, based on the figures this afternoon, we would have already provided 41 coverage to 41% of the target population with the first dose of the vaccine, and 2.8% of the target population is fully vaccinated. And at present, there are already changes in our health and travel protocols. So effective May the 1st, inbound air travelers to the Federation who are fully vaccinated, they can enjoy a reduction in their quarantine period. They are now in quarantine for 9 days versus 14 days. Now, effective May 20, fully vaccinated spectators can access venues of amateur and recreational sporting events. So football lovers like myself will be able to go to Warner Park and look at a match. Once you're fully vaccinated, you can go to basketball or athletic meets. However, there are some requirements that we still need to adhere to. Spectators must maintain hand hygiene, wear a face mask, and then we are going to be looking at the spectator capacity at the venue. Also, effective in July of this year, entertainment operators may be able to offer fully vaccinated cultural and entertainment events. So this starts around about July the 19th. So these are just some of the changes that are already taking place, and as we approach the herd immunity threshold, we can expect further relaxation and further relaxation. So tonight, I really want to encourage our people to be empowered with the accurate information about the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, about all the COVID-19 vaccines, and we want you to make the correct decision, knowing that if more and more persons are vaccinated, the closer we get to the herd immunity threshold, the closer to normal our lives will be going forward.
Well, Ian, I want to use my time, first of all, to thank you for having us on your show. There are a lot of persons who have a platform available to them, and they use it either to complain about what is not being done, as opposed to speaking about how they can help in the fight, or some persons choose not to say anything at all. And I believe whatever platform we have, we need to make sure that we try and educate persons and tell them the benefits of the vaccine. It's not enough for you to have a platform and to go like Nicodemus in the middle of the night and have the vaccine to protect yourself and your family and say nothing about it. And we have been in this fight from the very beginning since last year, and we'll continue to fight for every single person, including those who want to take the vaccines and those who do not want to take the vaccine, because no one is safe until everyone is safe. And so we thank you very much. I just want to tell everyone out there that more than 90% of the doctors in the Federation have taken the vaccine. A number of our frontline workers have taken the vaccine. I have taken the vaccine. My wife has taken the vaccine. My children. I would not be doing that if I didn't think it was safe and effective. And so I encourage you to do the same.
Cameron, I can allow you to get away with this. Because I asked about the timelines in terms of opening up. Hazel Good CMO spoke to her love for football. You love carnival. Are we going to have carnival?
Well, if you follow my Facebook page, you will see that very early I said that I don't know how I would survive another year without Carnival. And so I am asking everyone to go forward. I mean, there are a number of reasons why everyone would want to get back to some sense of normalcy. And I use Carnival time to get my exercise. You know, I jump in the Juve troop and the troops on New Year's Day, mainly to exercise, and so I'm looking forward to that.
Well, words can't express my gratitude for the service you continue to do, and coming on Straight Talk is continuing that service. Medical professionals, you've spent so many hours. I don't know if you can calculate that, and I don't know how we can remunerate you, no matter what awards you get. But I want to thank you, and your first time on Straight Talk. Straight Talk is always available, and feel free if you wish to come back. But I want to thank you for joining us tonight. I must also as well thank Almighty God in the process for guiding our conversation tonight, and as always, and as we say, whatever your mind conceive, that you will achieve. But first of all, we must believe. So let's thank as well our many callers. There are those who listen, those on the social media platforms, we thank you. Those who send emails, remember, you're the ones who make Straight Talk, and for that reason, I say a big, big thank you. So until we connect on Thursday for another edition of Straight Talk, I thank Dr. Cameron Wilkinson. I also thank Dr. Hazel Laws, and I want to thank our technical staff, Albert Bradley, they're in the studio, and in the back room, Bevan Wilkinson and John James. Without them, there is no Straight Talk. Bye-bye. Until we connect again, my Straight Talk family.
So I'll keep moving on. I won't stop now. I'll keep moving on to reach the top somehow. I'll keep moving on. I won't stop now. I'll keep moving on till I reach the top somehow. I'll keep moving on. I won't stop now. I'll keep moving on till I reach the top somehow. I'll keep moving.
If you own or work with animals, please follow these tips to avoid getting the coronavirus. Please keep pets away from areas where you are preparing food and eating your meals.